Uh, for anyone new here, we have a chat that can be used on the right hand side for communication. You can also ask to be on the stage, but we usually do it later at the end of the stream. I'm not sure how. So I've let everyone know that we're doing that. And I think we should be good enough to start. Now I will just share my screen as always. Yes, 1.4K, 60 FPS, and going live. All right, so the topic of today's discussion, as all suggested in the events section, where's that? So here is the French pogroms, the death of democracy. Well, I have to say that's quite a very loud and very posh name, say the least. And first, we'll quickly sort of go over what each word here means. So, the French, the adjective, and what is a pogrom? Well, not many of you may know, but in fact, pogrom is a synonym of the unrest. So, originally, it was sort of an organized massacre, public unrest of a particular ethnic group, and it was usually of Jewish people during the times of the Russian Empire. However, this word came from the Russian language into English, so it's basically a violent riot, incited with a very, malicious intent. So, we'll be talking about the French pogroms, so basically about the French unrests. And the second part of the name is the death of democracy. So, what I mean here? As you know, just several days ago we had the EU Parliament elections, where surprisingly for some people, an overwhelming majority was won by, let's put it, by the Conservatives. So here we have both the European People's Party, a center-right party known as the Christian Democrats. We have Socialists and Democrats, the left-wing party. We have Renew Europe led by Macron. They're pretty much center-left. We have Europe's of conservatives and reformists. That is, one of the prominent members is the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, and that is also right-wing. We have ID, that stands for Identity and Democracy, that is a far right, led by Macron's opponent Marine Le Pen. We have the Green Party, which is center-left, non-aligned movement. These guys are basically neutral. And we have the left. These are the far left political party. So it was surprising for some that the left won majority, the right won the majority of the seats in the European Parliament. Not that it was unpredictable, like some people quite agreed that the right wing would win, but not with that big of an amount, because now we have about like maybe 30 40 seats more given. No, actually less than that. I think we have about 20 seats more given to the right wing, let's say, members of the European Parliament than we have the ones belonging to the left the left wing of the European Parliament. As a result, several political leaders in the European Union wanted to do snap elections. So snap election is basically the second election. Someone tag me. Oh, for God's sake, I'm gonna upload this to our website. Can you please behave? Alright. So, talking about here. Also will be mentioning that we got snap elections is basically having the second elections. So how this works? Actually, maybe we should turn on the music. Or is it going to be too loud? I think it might be too loud for us. So, snap elections is basically the same elections happening, but once over again. For example, the center-left German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that he doesn't want to do snap elections. That for him it is democracy. He is satisfied how they happened, so no snap election for Germany, says the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. For him it's alright, they're not going to do the re-election program. However, Macron, the president of France, says the opposite. He called snap elections. to prevent the rise of far right in 2027 medieval vote. And this is interesting because the common perspective that we have is that people are supposed to protect democracy. The people are supposed to protect democracy at any cost. However, it might be difficult to protect this democracy where we have snap elections happening. Because what this means is that elections are deemed as invalid. So look from this perspective. We got the recording? Oh Jesus, I think I messed something up. Oh no. I'm not sure what happened. Alright, let's go over it once again. Basically what it means is that we are deeming these elections as invalid, or how we can also say rigged elections. Rigged elections is a type of electoral fraud. For example, when Trump won the 2016 presidential campaign in the United States of America, people were saying that that was a rigged election. People were disapproving that he was the president. When Joe Biden won the elections in 2020, mostly the conservatives were calling them as rigged elections. Now let's have a look at the voting chart here. Do we have the voting results somewhere over here? Because they're being sometimes displayed as this weird way. I think the first one showed that. Okay, we might have seen it here. No, not really what I was looking for. Alright, we often sometimes see stuff like this. So if for Trump, that is represented in red as the Conservative Party, where the Biden is for democracy, it's in blue, it's rising up steadily and slowly. Then for Biden, it was like going down, but then at a certain point of time somewhere over here, he just jumped all of a sudden, and he won the elections. Maybe we have it in this format. Yes. So what I'm referring, of course I'm exaggerating slightly, but what I'm saying here is that there was just a jump of votes all of a sudden. So that's why people were saying that these elections were rigged. And that surprised people in a way. Oh, especially this just perfectly depicts what I was saying. So we got a sudden jump. Of course, it's very much exaggerated here. You can see a clear difference, whereas in the original one, the difference is barely noticeable given the amount of people we have in the United States of America. But nonetheless, people were calling these elections as rigged. As you know, denying the elections is considered to be a crime in the US, because you're basically saying the elections are invalid, you're disagreeing with the current government of the US, so it's just, it's a crime, it's a judicial crime, first of all. But nonetheless, we're not talking about the US, we're talking about the rigged elections. So the idea is that these people want to protect democracy. They're saying that the elections were rigged, that allowed the so-called far right to rise in the European Union. However, I believe that we are missing here a huge point, is that we should mention that it is the European Union. It is highly improbable that we would have rigged EU elections, given the scale of that event, given the scale of details paid, because the utmost meticulous level of security and confidence was held to carry out such elections without any third-party interference. So many people were unsatisfied with these results. However, Germany has accepted the defeat of their political opinion, political stance, whether France says the opposite. And this is quite unsatisfactory, because just look from this perspective. Let's also look at the Paris unrest, EU elections, June. We'll type a bunch of random words and have a look at the images that are being shown of people celebrating Some people are saying mean stuff, I'm sure. Unfortunately, my French is not that good as I'm good. I speak better German than I speak French, to be honest. So I can't translate every post we have. But what we often see here is this how the far right aims to right farmers' outreach to power in Europe. Similar titles calling the far right obliterates Macron party in the election. Dramatic footage after the left party trails in EU elections. France's far right national rally. We often, or for example, The Guardian. The Guardian is a British left wing, I would say very much left wing newspaper that often, does this wording in their articles, especially in the titles, and even the intent of such articles is often quite malicious, as presented here, a European summit in June with far right on the rise. I think this just imposes the utmost level of double standards that you might have over here, because the left are always referred as to the left, not the far left, but the right are always referred as to the far right. And after all, let's have a look at this. We have identity and democracy. They have democracy. They must be protecting democracy. How come they can be far right? Some, very scary and evil, vile white supremacists, neo-Nazis, racists, homophobes, xenophobes, misogynists, ableists, anything you can name. Absolutely anything. And on the other hand, we have this, of socialists and Democrats. So on one hand we have these Democrats, on the other hand we have these Democrats. So you see the irony over here, even their colors are so opposite, their values are opposite. Well, they're similar, but the intent is different. But the wording, they all are using the word democracy. Whether it would be Republicans in the United States, they strive to defend their freedom, liberty, democracy. Whether it would be the Democrats in the US, they are all saying they want to defend democracy. Even in Russia, they are always saying they want to defend the democracy. Democracy, in this sense, seems to be this holy grail that no one, like literally absolutely no one, can ever achieve, because it is so impossible to reach. It's like communism. For decades and decades, people were being told that we must work hard in order to build a country of pure communism. And yet all of a sudden, since 1970, up to the fall down of the Soviet Union in 1991, almost 8 decades of communism led to absolutely nothing. No glorious, no prosperous Soviet Union. I admit, the culture of the Soviet Union was good. The technological progress was indeed impressive, as seen by the arm race between the USSR and the USA. But the so-called, so much promised, glorious communism was never ever achieved. Which leads us to more question. The democracy can be nothing else, can be nothing but pure form of rhetoric that is used to manipulate and persuade people into choosing, voting, and listening to you. Which is a very immoral thing to do, playing on people's feelings and emotions with the sole intent of satisfying the greedy dictatorship spirit. So, what we want to discuss is the French pogroms. I've already mentioned a lot of times that if the elections were done democratically, why would you protest against them? Why would you want the snap elections to happen? You're completely contradicting your views. You're going opposite of what you're saying, of what you want to do, of what you've promised to the people, and etc. That's quite an uneasy topic to discuss. We have a lot of these phrasings that from time to time are coming to mind. This far right, always far right. Not again here, election pact with far right. What is far right? I mean, Is far right, in your opinion, a bunch of Alternative for Deutschland guys who are literally wearing kippas, who are being Jewish, who are standing for that? Is this what you call far right? So who for you is far left if these guys are far right? This is exactly what I would call the situation of double standards. Highest level of hypocrisy and even simple ignorance. Because it works like this. If the left wins the elections, it means they were done democratically. If the right wins the elections, no, it must have been a rigged election. It just couldn't possibly happen. How could all of a sudden we want to protect our borders, our culture, our traditions, our people, and not, for example, care about the poor migrants coming from elsewhere in the world? For those people, it seems as a nature of common affairs that we must be democratic, and democracy can never be tied to radical forms of nationalism. But let me remind you that even Adolf Hitler came to power as being chosen democratically because that's what the people wanted. If you completely disrespect and disregards the people's needs and wants, you will end up and face a violent riot uprising. Huge civil unrests will will be present in your cities, on your lands, if you start disregarding the people's will. And these left-wing people inciting riots all across France are nothing but just the proof why the so-called far right are needed in Europe, because they need to regulate the current public unrests that are just going en masse all across Europe. Whether that would be Ireland, in November, where some girl was killed. I think it was November. Alright. Again, a migrant stabbed a girl, if I'm not mistaken. People wanted to protect their city and their culture. They started opposing the government, which in return, instead of listening to the people, resulted in them sending out special enforcements. Nothing has changed. And again, we could be seeing far-right agitators speculating that the attack bore the hallmarks of Islamist terrorism, whipped up a frenzy on social media and urged their followers to protest. I'm not sure that... whipped up a frenzy on social media. Now, let me show you that. It often happens to be that all the major BLM and pro-Palestinian protests end up in nothing but huge vandalism. People just start posting, drawing they start looting basically stuff to prove that they're being right. This is not being widely discussed on social media, but instead this is called a frenzy. Such news agencies such as The Guardian would never ever call this an act of frenziness, of vandalism. Instead, it would be called as the freedom of speech. However, if you were to drive a car and, for example, leave some markings from your tires, then it would be called a hate crime. For example, like over here, if you were to leave purposefully such a mark on an LGBT crosswalk, it would be considered and regarded as a hate crime. Here it's vandalized, defaced, an act of vandalism, and yet another act of vandalism. So people are showing their opinion with this simple act of adding some black color to the pride flag. And yet that is considered to be a hate crime. I can pretty sure that I can Google that, and because I've read somewhere that that is a hate crime. Of course, you have to prepare beforehand for such, wide topics. That's still a hate crime. That is still a hate crime. I can't find the article right now, but that is still considered to be a hate crime. However, if you were to draw on an act of monument that shows history, that would be your free speech. So you can see how much double standards are imposed in this society of. Okay. So you can see how people are expressing their opinion in a very violent way. However, this basic Dublin protest was labeled as an act of frenziness. So only the left wing is allowed to protest and to express their opinion. Once the right wing, once the conservatives do that, it's called a hate crime, an act of xenophobia, nationalism, chauvinism, anything that you could possibly label it on, it's immediately called like that. And this sparks up a lot of controversy, because if for you the left winning the elections is a form of democracy, and the right wing winning the same elections is not a form of democracy, what is democracy? Was democracy made for the left? Does it not exist for the right? That is the good question to ask you. Because can a country with a right-wing government system exist as democratic? Of course it can. Take Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, one of the country located on the peninsula, on the Arabic Peninsula. The government of Saudi Arabia provides no legal protections for LGBT rights. Saudi Arabia celebrates Pride Month by hanging gays with rainbow news. This country is being totalitarian, and you know why? Because Saudi Arabia monarch, which are called sheikhs, by the way, because sheikh is the Arabic word for king. What do we have here? The current rulers of Saudi Arabia are the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, and Prophet Muhammad is the central figure in Islam, who is the messenger of Allah. So these guys have monarchs in their country. They have monarchy as the main political system. Nonetheless, they allow democracy to happen, because democracy shows the will of the people. But people in Saudi Arabia are conservative. If the people in Saudi Arabia are conservative, their views are going to align with the views of the government. The people don't want LGBT rights to be acknowledged in Saudi Arabia. They won't be acknowledged neither by the jurisdiction of the country, neither by the ruling party. So it all comes down to the people. If the people for some certain country want something, it will happen in a democratic way. You don't have to, adjust anything within its constitution, electional system, or anything else like that, because it will happen nonetheless, on the basis that this is simply the culture of the people. The main question that we have here to ask ourselves is why is that, for example, democracy in Saudi Arabia works nicely, but the democracy in France is so incorrect? Now, when we're talking about that, let's actually look at some of these riots. So, let's go to YouTube, Paris Unrest 2024 EU elections, and let's watch together. We can see already one of the links is purple because let's have a look what these people represent of themselves. People crowding up, standing on the monuments, clearly protesting and holding banners. Can't translate at all. What I can say that populaire is likely to be the population, and fachos can be easily translated is the fascists. So Nick as fachos, something are fascists. For the people, for the population, Front Populaire. Again, I cannot translate myself. You can see a lot of people are gathering here, just crowding the streets. You can see Palestinian flags being woven over there. You can see people waving other political parties. We can see a lot of green color. For example, this for standing for ecology and NPA, which is a communist party in France. You can see the whole world is going really crazy, just thousands and thousands of faces. Again, I can already spot at least one Palestinian flag over here, with also an LGBT flag hidden just over there among the crowds, and a dominance of red color. Again, Palestinian flag if I'm not mistaken. Again, another Palestinian flag over there. And of course we can see a lot of people that are unhappy about something, protesting about God knows what. However, it's presented here when people are starting to block the streets. The police sirens are being heard in the distance, and people are igniting the flares, wearing masks to hide their faces, throwing it into the police vans, into the policemen. And what are they protesting against? Is it their form of democracy? This police is going to protect the property of their right owners that are located like these shops on the streets, and these police will be later called fascists for simply protecting what people have. This trash bin was put to the side as it was blocking the street. Now then we go and have a small later interview given by one of the protesters. Is it this video? It's not one. But what I want to show you is more. Again, the guy had a mustache like Hitler. Adolf Hitler, you can see. They're clearly referring that he's like Hitler. No idea why. It's such an absurd statement. Again, roads are being blocked by the police cars because they're being blocked by the people. They completely disregard that and be, for example, an ambulance with an ill patient that needs to go to the hospital. No, they will be blocking the street. They'll be putting more trash on the streets. They're being even provoking civil unrest as igniting something, disregarding that it might actually ignite even larger areas like that. And this is considered to be their form of democracy. Paris Unrest 2024 EU elections. Again, just look at this. Demonstrators in Paris protest against far-right gains in the EU 2024 elections. So is this how the left behave? It's always the left, but it's never the far left. And here one of the comments highlights what I'm saying. Far-right, the media uses propaganda all the time. So you don't democracy in France. It's very ironic that the first revolution in France happened because there was no democracy. They wanted to throw down the monarchy. And the so much strived for democracy is now being ended up in flares, quite literally. Let's have a look at some more of these videos to show you what the inside is all about. The Guardian, the left-wing British newspaper. Again, the far right makes game. Let's have a look at that. Standing on the monuments, completely disregarding the value, the tradition, the lives of the ancestors, I meant to say, not descendants, ancestors, yes. And again, more flags are being woven here. And let's have a look at this interview. You're going to be very much surprised. Let's have a look at what this madam has to say.
Est énorme, mais je pense que dissoudre l'Assemblée nationale, c'est vraiment un choix extrêmement difficile et c'est surtout un risque énorme pour toute la démocratie en France et en Europe et dans le monde. Moi, je suis d'origine libanaise, je suis né au Liban.
All right. So what the woman is saying that it's a very difficult choice to, to be dissolving the National Assembly, to doing snap elections. But she sees it as no other way that could protect democracy. So in order to protect democracy, we must first harm the democracy. It is similar to the phrase, if you want to have peace, you must be prepared for the war. The same here. If I want to save you, I first have to kill you. It's quite the opposite of what Jesus, for example, was preaching. But as you can see, people have this general, character that, we must protect Europe, France, all the world. But in order to do that, we must install an authoritarian, absolutely totalitarian regime with the utmost level of internet censorship in order to protect our so much cherished democracy. In order to protect democracy, people are having so many censorship laws installed that they end up in a complete state of totalitarian regime that they so much want to escape from. Let's have a look at the second interview. Another. So the guy is here saying he's from Lebanon. Lebanon is a country that's just above the Israel on the north. It hosts the infamous Hezbollah and etc. I like how he here says that he feels he's a Muslim and he feels he is to be under threat if they end up with the right-wing prime minister the next day, with a far-right prime minister in the country. So he fears for his safety. He comes from Lebanon to France and he wants someone to protect him. Why did he come to France in the first place? This level of double standards is infuriating. The people chose the conservatives. Yet these guys don't want it. So why can't people like him go back to Lebanon, where they were protected, being in a Muslim Brotherhood, but instead they have to go to France, that is a Christian country? That's one of those few questions that very few people like to ask themselves. Even less people even like to ask these questions in public. I'm one of the few ones that are doing that, though my audience is not that big to start off. We have like how many? We have just 2 people in our audience. Мы в конце сделаем, хорошо? Напиши, если хорошо, мы сделаем в конце, когда закончу говорить. Alright. Yeah, my audience is so small that we have just 2 people listening. But nonetheless, more people will see it anyway. So what is happening here, that it's always the far right, but these protests are being against the democratically chosen conservatives of Europe in order to protect so much cherished democracy. I can't just keep on going and going how much of completely idiotic this is. If you want to protect democracy, then be it. But don't disrupt the whole society because of your views. Because it is getting out of hand. Let's just AFP, this is the most neutral agency I've ever seen, to be honest. At least their videos on YouTube have been very neutral. Let's have a look, for example, here. We can see the same people from different perspective proposing their views, what they want to achieve. Let's make it a bit quieter, because all the cheering is not of a great importance, to say the least. We can see people wearing Arabic kufiya, there's a multiple way to spell it, but kufiya is an Arabic clothing that is used by the pro-Palestinian protesters to show their opinion that they support Palestine and not Israel. You can see the typical white and black colors of this guy headscarf. I have also a kufiya, but it's the military green one. I just bought it for fun, by the way, not for any political reasons. I'm not affiliated with any Palestinian party. And we can hear the cheering, the applause, and here we can see the anti-fascist flag over here, also called the Antifa flag, that features this crossed black and red colors, whether the red color is for communism, like this type of flag. We can see this flag being woven just over there behind the people there. And of course more people holding the handmade tablets out of carbon, Palestinian flag again being over there. Like, what does this have to do with Palestine? How is Palestine relevant here? Palestine is thousands and thousands of kilometers away, yet these people have not a single bad idea of what to do, other than stand with Palestinian flags and wave them for some other reason than to simply go back to their homes and keep doing their business. So you can see the level of absurdity this gets with this. Again, saying fascist. I'm interested. What does fascist mean? Does it mean fascists? Oh, of course it means fascist. Whom else? Whom else? Yeah, of course. Whom else? Whom else but not fascists? Of course. Again, the flag of the European Union, the flag of France, they're the same greens we've seen earlier, but at least these guys want renewable energy. At least they're worth of any value, not like the left, of like the same social democrats who just been absurd. Not the social democrats, but the left group that has been absurd to the most level. Like, these guys are waving the flag of the European Union. The European Union has chosen that they want to be governed by the conservatives, yet nonetheless they're still waving the European flag for some reason to show their disagreement, which is ironic, to say the least. And look, these people have nothing better to do than just to sit, walk on the streets while it's like 20 degrees Celsius outside and just protest. All these people that have been on the top floors over here probably want to have some good sleep, because the next day they'll be setting off to work somewhere else, whether that would be a factory or a banking institution, so that they could keep up the economy of their country. Whether some young people as here or this guy are probably going to do some gender studies the next day. I especially like the AFP news agency. They're not commenting on many things, they're commenting on barely anything, they're just being silent. Better to be called so-called far right than far wrong, as we say in Ireland. And yet another example of people wanting to live in a democratic society other than being oppressed by their governments. Let's have a look at this in video, for example, as well.
The first casualty of the EU elections, a weakened French president, Emmanuel Macron's party, was trounced by candidates for Marine Le Pen's Nationalist Party.
Une situation à laquelle je ne peux me résoudre.
Macron called snap elections, saying he couldn't ignore the message. In France, Italy, and Germany, a shift to the right and far right, predicted and feared by some voters.
When you look at the polls, I mean, the far right is set to make important gains this time, and yeah, that worries me as an EU citizen.
In Germany, the hard right party AfD celebrated a second-place finish in the country Young voters turning right and leaving the Green Party.
But it's absolutely clear that especially the young voting results in Germany.
This guy is the head of the Green Party, because we've seen him earlier. If I go the Green Party he will be just on the news page saying that we need to stand united against the far right today, as we never had to do it ever before. Where did they have it? We surely did have it. Yeah, this guy, just over here. And again, this flag was being woven all across France.
Are devastating.
European Greens lost nearly all the gains they made in the last elections just 5 years ago.
I think the challenges are bigger and the political situation is becoming less stable. It's not a good combination.
Europeans are feeling buffeted by war, by increasing migration, and an inflationary economy. Hundreds of millions voted. Turnout was up over 50%. In villages in the Flemish part of Belgium, many voters supported nationalist parties over an expanded EU.
I feel a little bit neglected by our government in the last 5 years, in a lot of ways.
Bart Spiessens told us...
Okay, we won't be watching the whole video because you can find a ton of this on the internet, but you're seeing the guy saying, we feel neglected by our governments over the past 5 years. And I believe this is exactly what is happening in many places across Europe. The same France, the same Germany, Italy, Belgium, and a number of other European countries. People are just being neglected, being left, and almost as if disposed of. And imagine that the official France website has Arabic language. Just there's so many Arabic migrants in France now having their own Arabic language. Which is interesting, because even when before the EU elections, several German political parties were, giving out the handlets written in Arabic language for the migrants. Let's look at that. German Arabic EU elections handlets, because they were like, do we have it? Ooh, I can't find the picture I'm looking for. So Germany, gluing EU electional posters in Arabic. This is definitely what I wanted to say. Definitely. But I've seen that some people were just gluing electional posters in Arabic language in Germany. And not surprising, because there's so many migrants from Afghanistan, Syria, and as we've seen last time, they do a lot of crimes, people are very unhappy, and they all of a sudden, there are people who are unsatisfied that they're basically being genocided and no crimes are being imposed on those who offended them, which is again ironic in its own way. Let's have a look at some news that are happening in France on the official French website. Well, official is in terms of, just a news website. Snap elections to prevent the rise of far right in 2027 presidential vote. Oh, let's look at this. I've seen this article earlier today, I haven't properly started them. Let's look at this. So French business leaders urged to stick their neck out against far right. You can already understand what meant stick their neck out, like to unite, but let's just Google for those who don't know, who might be watching us today. So bravely say you do something that might be criticized and turn out to be wrong. So we need to bravely stand up basically against the far right. What is this business leaders promoting? Which is again very ironic in a way from my perspective, to say the least. And now we have Macron, who wants to do snap elections to prevent the rise of far right in 2027. You know what it reminds me? It reminds me when Trump was almost as if sent to jail. His mugshot was taken some time ago, and basically what's happening that I mean, I will not be now saying who is right, who is wrong. I will be saying the facts as they are. That people in the internet were at least speculating that Biden wants to dispose of Trump in the upcoming elections, so Trump won't win, by making a criminal out of him and putting him into jail. This was not seen as a democratic way of, treating your political enemies, because it more reminded of the night of the long knives. The night of the long knives was the main opponents of Hitler were basically killed. Yes. Purge of Nazi leaders by Hitler. So Hitler would be the sole person who came to power. We had a lot of people slaughtered. I believe even the famous Rommel was killed during the night of the long knives. Not so sure about that, but I think he was killed. Was Rommel killed? When was Rommel killed? Oh, actually, no. Okay, I apologize to all. I thought he was killed during the night of the long knives. He actually survived that. Well, I'm not sure he was assassinated. I think maybe the chief of the SA units was killed. Might have been that guy. So, what I'm saying basically is that disposing of your enemies sounds like purges, the ones done by Stalin in his famous Gulag system. And equally doesn't show you as a person who'd be striving to protect the so-called democracy. So, the same could be happening here. The Trump calling to do snap elections results in nothing else but their disposal of hard power, an extreme level of hard power, complete neglect of people's vote, complete neglect of democracy, and using the governmental forces and the judicial power we have in the Constitution to prevent and safeguard your power, so you would still, or at least your party, your predecessors, will be still in favor in the future. I'm not sure how snap elections are going to affect much, because if the people chose one time the right over the left, they will do it the second time, especially given the number of riots we've seen. Because, if you are a sane person, I mean, just imagine, you voted, for example, for the left because you want, you love this wonderful society that you're living, and all of a sudden, I want to see the proper photo, because any of these photos might be from months ago. Okay, this one. And then all of a sudden you see this photo. People just setting up bonfires in the middle of a street. Of course you're going to say, oh Lord, what have I done? Why am I voting for the left? Why did I vote for the left? I'm going to vote for the right only from now on. So that, in a way, might even provoke people from turning from the left to the right is going to give an opposite effect. It's not going to be a display of power, of motivation, of, unity between the people. It's going to be a display of the utmost level of ignorance, violence, and hatred that one person can even imagine to have. So that, in a way, will only give more the right-wing politicians benefit in their future and more potential voters. However, what if all of a sudden the left will win? How can it be? The protests that quite literally ignited the streets of Paris are now in favor. They did their job well. They helped. This Danson May, by the way, Mayday. They helped the left to win. It's going to be a bit absurd. Come on. Can it honestly be that way? If I'm going to go out on the streets waving a Palestinian flag, making barricades on the streets. I will not let the cars go, and equally I will be, fighting the policemen with bonfires and any other throwable utilities like smokes, flares, and anything like that. Is it going to benefit me? If all of a sudden the left wings, the potential, but I'm likely think they can happen, the future snap elections, people are just going to start asking questions. When the elections rigged, they're going to have a lot of mistrust in their government. But not only that, it's not going to be solely about the government. It's going to be all across Europe. People will have doubts in the French government. People all across the world will have doubts in their French government. But in the governments of other countries as well. If, for example, Macron does snap elections, the left wings all of a sudden, people are starting to say the elections are rigged. Well, what does this stop, for example, a Spanish citizen from saying that their elections could be rigged, if not they were already rigged in the future, in the past, or in the present? Nothing stops that from happening. So if Macron does that, it's going to cause a lot of disturbance within the domestic politics of the European Union. It has already provoked a lot of controversy and discussions by simply stating that you want to do snap elections. But it's going to give much more trouble in the future. So the same question to ask here is that a little wording, a little claim by a high status official, of course, that claim is widely spread in media, can already be more than enough to provoke a very violent uprising in a country. And it can easily overspill to neighboring countries, which puts a threat to global security. Because if people all of a sudden are able to protest with such violence on such a controversial topic, it leads to their internal instability. Because any state can end up in ruins if people just were able to go out so easily and simply and protest. There are many other ways how people can protest, especially nowadays in the 21st century. How correct, how morally, ethically is it right to commit such protests? In my opinion, it's definitely not. It does the opposite effect, and this is the danger. You might be thinking you will do good for your country, when in return it's going to be bad, but times and times worse than you've originally planned. And that is quite an unfortunate situation. Because we can see such claims in the internet. Macron urges French voters to make right choices in snap elections. French voters are getting irritated about having to vote against someone rather than for. This is dangerous because such claims can leave people very unsettled and concerned about the future. What if people start leaving the country? I mean, I guess it will be good for the government. They can have more migrants, regarding that there are some free flats now, free living space. But on the other hand, it will damage the economy. The international image of the country is going to lie in ruins if people are going to keep making such claims. That's why it is such a dangerous precedent. One precedent will always lead to another, and people do acknowledge it, and as the result, the whole public unrest turns into an international unrest, overspilling from a country to another country, to a continent, all over the world. That's why it is so important to be doing so. I believe I've quite gone over this issue in details regarding this thing, how the French pogroms is the death of democracy. If you are proposing your views, if you want to uphold them, you must do it to the very end. And if democracy for you means always winning, it is not democracy, but a race, a competition between dictators. So, summarizing what I've said, I believe I actually summarized enough to go any further than that, at least for now, because it's been only 2 days since we've seen such footage in the internet. Maybe something future develops as well, and then we'll cover it. Who knows? But for now, I think that is it. So I will now ask the questions to the audience. Do people in the audience have any questions? My Polish friend from Poland, do you have any questions? If you type anything bad or incorrect, just, we will be almost like as if done. Because I'm talking about serious topics, I want you to treat them seriously as well. You have a serious question, ask me that. I will answer that with pleasure. Like, quick question, long question, I will answer it with pleasure. Just make it, please, a proper question. A serious one. The picture itself was chosen very nicely. We have a saturated red color. I very much like this color. I'm not allowed to wear this color because I'm Ashkenazi Jewish, and Ashkenazi Jews are not wearing red color. It is prohibited. But I like this color nonetheless. It is a good color. Though I guess sometimes, no, I'm not wearing red color. Like nothing in my wardrobe is of red color. Nothing, absolutely. Not even a belt, not even underwear is red colored. Anyway, come on, let's just delete it. So, like in Poland, you need a permission for closing a street or a protest strike. So it gives them, if they do, a permission for such thing, which makes a lot of losses. You see, usually you need to obtain an official agreement to protest, because as a matter of fact, in Russia we have a lot of people going to prison for so-called unsanctioned protests in Russia. So unless you obtain a permission from the government to protest in Russia, you will be jailed or given a fine. The thing is that the government never ever gives out such permissions. Never ever. I believe for other countries it is equally as well, because let's just imagine, if you let's have a look at this. For example, USA protests, because we need a live example. You need to see it like this. You are blocking public space. You're damaging the grass. You're damaging the environment. For example, here we have people just crowding the streets. If you're crowding the streets, you are disrupting the movement of the traffic. The whole traffic movement is just stopped because there are thousands, hundreds of people. So you have to, discuss it with the government beforehand, before actually going out to protest. The big thing here is that not always such protests are organized. Such protests here within the tents are not organized whatsoever. They're just being done randomly, absolutely randomly. Students discuss it in their group chats that they want to protest, they go out, set up the tents, do that. We also, interesting enough, how many of these tents are similar across all of the US, and they're being funded by Soros, a Hungarian Jewish businessman who is seen as a very bad globalist who is banned in China, Russia, Pakistan, etc. But just as a fact. Also, people disrupting the movement. You have to obtain a permission. But do you think that people in Paris would obtain permission for such elections? I think it goes without saying that these people don't have a single permission to protest. They simply take a flag, go out and protest. Because we can also see them vandalizing bars. Do we have a video here? Because I've seen some videos on my stuff, but we are not seeing any here. I think we're not here. But what I'm trying to say, that none of these protests have a legal permission from the government. They are just doing that on their own will. They're being unsanctioned, and theoretically the police is supposed to stop them. But come on, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of these protests. They're wearing protection, bicycle helmets, bicycle protection pads, paintball equipment, airstrike equipment, basic riot shields made out of cardboard, pieces of plastic. How we've seen a ton during, from the looters. Do we have a good example here? Let's say homemade riot shield. Alright, these again, anti-fascist, Antifa movements. They're simply taking out these cans, sewing them into halves, and boom, you got yourself a shield. It doesn't do much, it protects you against at least something, but it's not that good anyway. But you see what I mean. People will be having equipment, a lot of stuff made. These guys got even like soldier caps or something. So of course, no one has permission to protest, at least in France. No permission is being given from the government. But people do that nonetheless, because they know they're not going to be arrested. Not all of them are going to be arrested at least. And even if the police gets close to them, the police is going to be attacked. So the police doesn't want to escalate the conflict. And in order not to escalate the conflict and make it more violent, they can just use tear gas, rubber bullets, and police batons to fight off the attackers. But nothing other than that. So, did I answer your question? Did you hear what I said? If you got any more questions, feel free to ask me them. This time I got my computer on the charger. It seems to work fine. No lags whatsoever, no freezes. So we're doing it good. Did I answer your question? Do I have to repeat? Did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I was talking about? Well, okay. Did I answer your question? Yes or no? Yeah. So I will just unmute the music then, because I believe we will be finishing at this point. Actually, yeah, I think it's nice this way. So thank you guys for coming here. It was really enjoyable. We didn't have many people. We had like 3 people the most, I believe. 2 definitely. So yeah, we might have future meetings like this in the future, but for this point it's all. Again, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for coming, and see you all next time. Goodbye.